There are certain moments that slap you across the face, not with violence, but with this weird, icing-covered clarity. For me, it was a cake. A chocolate sheet cake, to be specific. White frosting. Blue cursive lettering. Gold confetti sprinkled like someone Googled celebration and hit purchase on the first link. It sat on the kitchen island like it owned the house. Center stage. Lit from above like the second coming of dessert. And on it? Congrats, Daniel! That was it. No. Love, Mom and Dad. No. We're proud of you both. Not even a casual. Congrats, Daniel, and also, I guess, Ryan. Nope. Just 3 words and my brother's name in bold, sugary arrogance. I stared at it, holding a solo cup of lukewarm lemonade, trying to convince myself it was a joke. That maybe my name was on the other side. Hidden. A surprise reveal, like edible peekaboo. It wasn't. Maybe they ran out of space. I mumbled. Joe, my best friend since we were the only 2 kids who could explain the difference between volts and amps in 7th grade, raised an eyebrow. Ryan. That's a Costco sheet cake. Those things could fit a eulogy. I laughed. But it was the kind that makes your chest feel hollow after. Like your lungs aren't playing along. The worst part? This wasn't some random oversight. This was intentional. The whole party had slowly morphed from celebrate both sons to let's all admire Daniel like he invented capitalism. The flyers, the decorations, the playlist. It was like Daniel curated everything himself, or maybe Mom did, based on what she thinks a Harvard-adjacent graduate would enjoy. Even the music was jazz. Jazz. Daniel didn't even like jazz. But Princeton sounded like jazz, and that's what mattered. I stood there in a button-down shirt that didn't quite fit, and jeans I'd worn to work last week, while everyone else wore boat shoes and cologne that had Latin names. And in every conversation I joined, someone inevitably asked me, "So, what do you do now?" Cue awkward pause. "I'm apprenticing as an electrician," I'd say, pretending not to notice the immediate eye drift. Sometimes I added, "It's actually really rewarding, and I like it a lot." But only when I felt like punishing myself. I thought Mom might at least toss me a "We're proud of both boys" during her little speech. Instead, she tapped a fork against her wine glass and delivered a heartfelt toast about Daniel's academic excellence, future leadership potential, and grace under pressure. No mention of me. Not a whisper. When I asked her about the cake afterward, trying to be casual, like I wasn't bleeding emotionally from 1,000 paper cuts, she didn't even stop walking. Just shrugged mid-stride and said, "Well, you dropped out." That was it. Not even a blink of hesitation. Just that line, served cold, no garnish. Joe's mouth dropped. Did she just? Yep, I said, setting my lemonade down and wiping my hand on my jeans. She did. For a few seconds I stood still, like maybe time would reverse and the party would reset with some basic human decency. It didn't. Daniel was across the yard in a suit that probably cost more than my first toolbox, shaking hands with our uncle while someone laughed too hard at a joke I knew he stole from Reddit. Everyone was beaming. Everyone was here for him. I wasn't even sure why I'd come. Actually, scratch that. I knew exactly why I came. Because deep down, I still wanted to believe I mattered to them. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment where they saw I wasn't a failure just because I didn't take the same road as Daniel. That maybe, after years of being the other kid, I'd get a slice of something sweeter than leftovers. Instead, I got a cake that erased me in front of everyone. And suddenly, standing there surrounded by laughter and jazz and hors d'oeuvres I couldn't pronounce, I realized something. They didn't forget me. They just didn't care enough to remember. After the toast, the cake, and the shrug, I stayed for exactly 13 more minutes. 12 of those were spent standing near the cooler pretending to enjoy sparkling water that tasted like it had been whispered at by a lime. The last minute was spent trying to decide whether leaving early would cause a scene. Spoiler, it wouldn't. Because no one would notice. Even my own exit had to be strategic. I didn't want to give anyone the satisfaction of saying I was being dramatic. So I slipped through the back, behind the garage, past the absurd inflatable lawn champagne bottle someone rented. for vibes, and walked 2 blocks before calling Joe. You left? She asked, already knowing the answer. I left, I said. A pause. Then, did you at least eat the cake? Nope. Good. It probably tasted like student debt and favoritism. I smiled, even though my chest felt like a kicked suitcase. Joe had that effect, humor in the exact shape of a band-aid. I kept walking, hands in pockets, wind in my face, shoes scuffing pavement like they wanted to make sure I knew how small I was. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rebellious. It was just overdue. I'd been walking away from that house since I was 15. Just slower. My family always made it seem like love was conditional. Not overtly. No one ever said it out loud. But it was there, in the way praise was handed out like rare tokens, in how Daniel got claps for showing up to Thanksgiving while I was scolded for being too quiet. Daniel was destined. That's the word my mom used once at dinner, like we were living in a fantasy novel. He's destined for something big, she said, beaming like she wrote his college essay herself. When I asked what I was destined for, she laughed and said, well, you're a great problem solver. Maybe you'll fix things. The world needs more of that. Fix things. Like appliances? Pipes? Emotional damage? I don't think she meant it to be insulting. That was the worst part. Her disappointment was always dressed in compliments. So when I dropped out of community college after a year and a half of pretending to care about business courses I couldn't afford, I didn't make a big announcement. I just stopped showing up. Started helping out a guy named Tony, my neighbor's cousin, who ran an electrical repair business. He offered to teach me the ropes if I showed up on time and didn't touch his lunch. I said yes without blinking. It was the first time I felt useful. Not potentially useful, not someday maybe. But actually needed. I learned how to wire a breaker box before I learned how to tie a tie. Fixed a faulty panel in a house older than my dad's marriage and got a thank you tip that almost made me cry. It wasn't glamorous. No one threw me a party. But I slept better. My hands ached in a way that made sense. Of course, I didn't tell my parents right away. I wanted to wait until I had something to show them. A license, maybe my own van, anything that might soften the blow of. I left the path you planned for me. But now, standing there watching Daniel get a standing ovation for breathing Ivy League air, I realized they never would have cared either way. As long as I wasn't Daniel, I was a footnote. Joe picked me up near the gas station by Maple and 4th. I didn't say much. Just opened the door, sank into the passenger seat, and muttered, "Let's get fries." She didn't ask questions. Just nodded and drove. That's why she's my people. Half an hour later, we were sitting on the hood of her car outside a diner that never changed its sign lights, passing curly fries back and forth while I stared at the stars like they owed me answers. You ever think I messed up? I asked finally. Joe blinked. By leaving school? Yeah. No. I think you messed up by expecting anything different from your mom. That one hit harder than the fries. She leaned back, arms behind her head. You're the only person I know who actually knows how to do something. Not talk about it. Not pitch it. Do it. That's worth a hell of a lot more than a cake. I looked down at my hands. Calloused. Burn-scarred. Real. Maybe she was right. But that night I made a decision, one I didn't say out loud. Not yet. If they were going to treat me like I didn't exist, then fine. Let's see how they handle it when I really disappear. The weirdest part wasn't the cake. It was what happened after. Nothing. No calls. No texts. No "hey, sorry about the party mix-up," or your mom didn't mean it like that. Just silence. Like I'd been soft-deleted from the family spreadsheet. Even Daniel, Mr. Honor Roll in Gucci loafers, didn't reach out. I figured he'd at least send a "no hard feelings" text. Instead, he updated his Instagram bio to Princeton 24, analyst incoming, coffee sleep. I unfollowed him. Okay, fine, I blocked him. But only because I didn't want to wake up one day to a story of him clinking glasses at some rooftop mixer with the caption, "Building the future." I was busy enough trying to keep the lights on, sometimes literally. By the end of that week, I was back in my rhythm. Wake up, throw on boots, haul wire, take lunch in a parked van that smelled like solder and regret. I liked it. It made sense. Unlike the people I shared DNA with. Tony, my boss, part-time philosopher, full-time crank, started tossing more jobs my way. He was the kind of guy who didn't trust anyone under 40, but he trusted me to not electrocute myself or flirt with clients. That was high praise in his book. "You're reliable," he said one afternoon while we were rewiring an old farmhouse with knob and tube death traps. "Like a good wrench. Not flashy. Just works." I think that was a compliment. Jo said it was. "You're not a wrench," she told me later over microwave burritos. "You're like a multi-tool." "Thanks. Very inspiring." She grinned. "You're a Swiss Army knife with trauma." It's true, though. I was learning how to do more than just wiring. Permits, property codes, inspections. I was even helping Tony navigate zoning rules on an upcoming job. And that's when something shifted. We were in the city records office, waiting for a permit to be processed, when I saw a name I recognized. Sandra Nichols. Address, 472, Almont Avenue. Status: lease expires in 2 months. Almont Avenue was home. My childhood house. Well, technically their house, my parents', not mine. I hadn't been back since the party. But I knew that street like the back of my hand. And Sandra Nichols? Definitely not family. I leaned in. "Hey Tony," I said. "You ever worked around Elmont?" He grunted. "Couple times. Fancy old craftsman homes." "Why?" "No reason," I said. But my brain was already lighting up like faulty Christmas lights. Later that night, I did what every emotionally distant adult does when they sense something sketchy. I looked it up. The house was listed under a rental company. Not owned. Leased. I blinked at the screen. They didn't own the house anymore. That meant one thing: they had a landlord. And I couldn't help thinking, what if that changed? I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was upset, but because my brain wouldn't stop buzzing. Not with anger. With possibility. I don't know what kind of therapy other people go to, but mine was called public property records and petty motivation. That night I dug deeper. I found the property manager. Called pretending to be a potential tenant. Asked if anything on Almont Avenue was coming available soon. The woman, Terry, polite with a smoker's cough, said, "Actually, one's ending in a month. Beautiful corner house, big porch, good bones. Tenants have been there a while. Bit behind on some maintenance. Interested?" Oh, I was interested. Not in renting. In owning. I didn't tell Jo right away. Mostly because I wasn't sure how to say, "Hey, so I'm casually trying to buy my parents' house so I can legally evict them in a blaze of poetic justice. Thoughts?" Instead, I just said, "I've been thinking about getting into property." She blinked. "Like monopoly property or adult property?" "Adult. But with the same amount of quiet vengeance." She nodded. "I support this energy. To be clear, I wasn't rich. Not even close. But I'd been stacking savings for years. I lived cheap. Took every overtime shift. Did side jobs fixing outlets and sketchy basements where the wallpaper peeled like sunburn. I never had a vacation. My idea of splurging was getting guac and queso. But I had enough for a down payment. Barely. So I called in a favor. Tony had a buddy named Mark, mortgage broker, cynical, divorced 3 times, but knew the system like he built it himself. "You're how old?" he asked over the phone. 24. "You make how much?" I told him. He paused. "And you want to buy what?" I gave the address. He whistled. "You're aware this is a generational home in a competitive zip code?" "Yeah. But it's got termites." He laughed. "I like you?" The paperwork was a beast. I've seen fewer signatures in hostage situations. But I kept at it. Did everything above board. Got the inspection, which revealed a leaky basement, outdated plumbing, and a raccoon den in the attic. All fixable. All mine, if I could pull it off. Meanwhile, life went on. My parents still hadn't called. Not once. I checked their socials occasionally, just to see if I'd been publicly exiled. I hadn't. But I'd been replaced. New family photos. Daniel in a tailored jacket, Mom in pearls, Dad pretending to like wine. Captions like, proud moments, and, when your children soar. No mention of me. And yet, I didn't feel small anymore. Because while they were posting, I was building. Fixing panels. Helping Tony finish a commercial job that paid stupid well. Saving every dollar like I was playing emotional blackjack and betting it all on one glorious, checkmate moment. At night, I'd walk by Elmont Avenue. Not to spy. Just to remind myself, that place raised me. Not with kindness. But with rules. Expectations. Pressure. And if this worked, I'd turn it into something else. Something fair. Mark called 2 weeks later. You got approved? I blinked. Wait. What? Loan's good. Offer accepted. Closing in 10. I sat down on the floor of my apartment, which still had milk crates for shelves, and laughed. It was happening. I wasn't just getting closure. I was getting a key. The day I signed the papers, it rained. Not the cinematic kind. No thunderclaps, no dramatic lightning bolts. Just that annoying drizzle that feels like the sky's leaking from emotional exhaustion. I didn't care. I wore my second best flannel, walked into that office, signed 30 pages like I was giving custody of my soul to a copier, and left with a key. A literal key. To their house. To my childhood house. I didn't tell anyone. Not Joe. Not Tony. Not even myself, really, not until I stood across the street from 472, Elmont Avenue, holding the key in my hand like it might start talking. The porch light was still crooked. The same hydrangeas Mom planted were half dead. The wind chime that used to scare our dog in 2007 still hung by one bent hook. A light was on in the living room. Faint silhouettes moved across the curtains. Laughter floated through the cracked kitchen window. They were inside. Warm. Relaxed. Watching TV, maybe sipping wine. Completely unaware that a stranger with a tool belt and a grudge now had the legal right to evict them. And not just any stranger. Me. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. I felt calm. Like standing at the top of a roller coaster right before the drop. Only I had built the coaster myself, every screw and rail, every quiet step. The next few days were weird. I kept doing normal stuff, work orders, breakfast burritos, fixing a trip circuit for an elderly woman who tipped me in banana bread. But everything had a shimmer to it, like I'd been let in on a secret the world wasn't ready for. I'd bought a house. Not just any house. That house. And they didn't know yet. Joe noticed something was up. She always did. Over burgers one night, she gave me a look. You've been smirking for 3 days straight, she said. Either you got a new toolbox or you're plotting something. I blinked. Can it be both? She narrowed her eyes. Are you pregnant with revenge? I might be. Waiting for the right trimester. She leaned in. Do I get to be the godmother? I paused. Then said, Joe. I bought their house. Silence. Then her soda shot out of her nose. You what? I'm their landlord now. You bought your parents' house? Technically, yes. Leased, but the title's mine now. I've got the mortgage and everything. Joe stared at me like I just admitted to being Batman. Then she stood up in the diner booth, arms in the air like she was leading a revival meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached peak petty. The prophecy is fulfilled. I pulled her back down. Keep it down, I haven't told them yet. She grinned. So when's the moment? The dramatic letter? The tuxedoed reveal? I haven't decided, I said. Let them marinate. She folded a fry into her ketchup like she was writing in blood. You should send a letter with gold foil. Or glitter. Or maybe just a single sentence. The basement smells like betrayal. Also, rent is due. Tempting, I said. But no. I want it cold. Legal. Boring. Corporate vengeance, she said dreamily. The deadliest kind. I laughed, but part of me was still locked across the street from that house. That house with the green-trimmed windows and the chip in the sidewalk I once tripped over on my bike. That house with the garage where I'd built my first circuit board. That house where my mom yelled at me for burning toast but didn't blink when Daniel crashed her car. That house. And now, that house was mine. I even got the lease updated. Clean. Official. My name on every page. Filed in a beige folder under Carter Ryan. I added a note to the file. Please route all future correspondence to R. Carter. It was happening. And for once, I wasn't trying to earn a seat at their table. I was building my own table. And if they wanted to sit at it, they were going to need a lease. I mailed the letter on a Tuesday. Nothing fancy. No glitter. No scented paper. Just a plain envelope, typed address, standard postage stamp, ironically, a picture of a lighthouse. Appropriate, I guess, since I was now the beacon. Or maybe the warning. Inside was a single-page notice. Polite. Professional. The kind of tone you use when telling someone they've parked illegally, on your soul. To current tenant for 72 Almont Avenue. From R. Carter, property owner. This letter serves to inform you of an administrative transition regarding the ownership of the above-mentioned property. The lease agreement remains in effect. However, the terms will be reevaluated upon expiration. Any questions regarding future tenancy should be directed to the undersigned. R. Carter. No drama. No insults. Just the facts, delivered with the emotional temperature of a tax form. I debated signing it. With warmest regards. But subtle revenge tastes best unseasoned. Jo read the draft beforehand. She squinted and said, "This sounds like a letter you'd get right before your electricity gets shut off." "Perfect," I replied. "Needs a little flourish," she said. "Maybe an emoji. A tiny house. Or a power drill." I went with Garamond instead. Elegant. Judgmental. The envelope slipped through the mail slot like a whisper. That was it. No fireworks. No soundtrack. Just the quiet, slow grind of karma working a part-time shift. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute passed. Then another. I listened. It was my mom. "Hi. This is unexpected. We got a letter? About the house? About the lease? Are you sure this is? Just call me back, please." Her voice cracked halfway through. I couldn't tell if it was panic or pride swallowing itself. I didn't call back. Instead, I drove past the house that evening. Not to rub it in, just to see. Observe. Confirm that the moment was real. The lights were on. Porch glowing. Same cracked flower pots, same crooked wind chime. Inside, I caught a glimpse of Daniel pacing, phone in hand. My dad sat in his recliner, flipping channels like he was fighting static. And my mom? She stood at the dining table, holding the letter. My letter. I watched her read it again. Mouth moving slightly, like she was trying to taste the words. Her eyes scanned the signature. Then she looked up. Her face was pale, puzzled, like she just opened a gift and found a resignation letter inside. I parked a block away and sat there a while. The house looked smaller than I remembered. As a kid, it was massive, the fortress of all my arguments, dreams, detentions. I remembered riding my scooter in that driveway, scraping my knee on the porch steps, the way my dad yelled when I broke the screen door. I remembered sitting on that very front stoop after my high school graduation, alone, because they were too busy celebrating Daniel's early college acceptance. Now it was just a structure. Wood, siding, bills. Mine. Later, I played the voicemail for Jo. She was eating trail mix like it owed her money. "Play it again," she said. I did. By the third listen, she was cackling. "Oh man. She sounds like she just realized her favorite dog filed for emancipation. She sounded tired. She sounded surprised. Which is weird considering she's the one who raised a problem solver." I nodded slowly. "You know what's wild? I thought I'd feel guilty. You feel good?" "I feel balanced." "Balanced is dangerous," she said. "Balanced people send invoices." And that's when it clicked. I wasn't trying to hurt them. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was just reminding them that I existed. Not as an accessory to Daniel's resume, not as a family obligation, but as a person. One who could sign a deed. One who could send a letter. One who no longer needed a seat at their table, because I owned the house with the table in it. It took less than a week. 5 days, 2 missed calls, and 1 awkward group text titled, Family Chat Red Heart. A chat that had not included me in over 2 years. Suddenly I was back. "Mom, can we talk?" "Mom, we were surprised by the letter." "Dad, we should have been consulted." "Daniel, this is pretty aggressive, Ryan." "Mom, let's not make this a thing." "Daniel, it's not too late to fix this. Let's be adults." "Mom, we raised you better than this." That one made me pause. "You raised me? What part was the raising?" The years of being told to be quiet while Daniel focused? The way I was offered leftovers, emotionally and literally, while Daniel got private SAD tutoring and a birthday trip to Napa. Jo peeked at my phone over breakfast. She narrowed her eyes. "Oh good, the gaslighting group project has kicked off. What's next?" "Dad typing I'm disappointed like he's Gandalf of morality?" "Just wait," I said. "There's more." A minute later, another came through. "Daniel, look, I get you're upset. But don't burn bridges over something like a graduation party. That cake wasn't even my idea. I told them you should have been included. I fought for you." That one actually made me laugh. Like a dry, short bark of disbelief. Jo read it and choked on her cereal. "He fought for you. Daniel's the kind of guy who fights for things by signing digital petitions and then forgetting he did it." "I know. You should respond with 'your rent is due, counselor.'" But I didn't respond. Instead, I sent one final letter. Professional. Sterile. Same font. Same weight. To current tenants for 72 Almont Avenue. From R. Carter, property owner. This is a formal notice that your current lease will not be renewed. You have 30 days from the date of this letter to vacate the premises. Any questions regarding the transition can be directed to the contact information on file. R. Carter. I attached a PDF copy to the group chat. No caption. Just silence and a digital thud. 10 minutes later, Daniel called. I declined. Then Dad. Straight to voicemail. Then Mom. That one I let ring, just to feel the weight of it. She left a message. "Ryan, please. This isn't the way to handle things. We can talk. It doesn't have to be like this. You're still family." Still family. Right. Just like I was still family when I wasn't invited to Daniel's award dinner. Or when they said they'd circle back on helping with tuition but bought matching patio furniture instead. Or when my name was left off the cake because, well, you dropped out. Still family. Convenient words when the lease is up. That night, I drove by the house one last time. Not for drama. Not for gloating. Just to see it under the stars. The porch light was off. The curtains were shut. A single lamp was on upstairs, probably Dad reading something and pretending nothing was happening. I parked at the curb. I thought I might feel triumphant. Or at least smug. But mostly, I felt like I was staring at a museum exhibit of my own adolescence. I thought of the time I built a makeshift telescope on that roof and spent the night trying to find Jupiter. The time I hid a birthday card in the air vent for myself because no one else remembered. The exact spot in the hallway where I once overheard my mom say, "Ryan just doesn't have Daniel's drive." This house held more ghosts than memories. And now it was closing time. I didn't need applause. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. And you can't get peace from people who only look up when they're losing something. I didn't show up on move-out day. Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't need to be there. I'd already said everything I needed to. In silence. In signatures. In that envelope with Garamond font. Instead, I let the property manager handle the inspection. Her name was Terry. We'd spoken exactly 4 times. She didn't ask questions. Just confirmed the handover, filed the paperwork, and texted me a photo of the empty key hook by the front door. It was done. I looked at the photo for a long moment. The house looked exactly the same. And yet, completely different. Like it had been washed of a certain energy, one I used to carry in my chest like a brick. Joe and I celebrated by getting lunch at the same diner where she first found out about the house. "You going to rent it out?" she asked, sipping her soda. "Eventually," I said. "Airbnb with ironic themes? Welcome to Parental Disappointment Lane?" We both laughed. She leaned in. "You know, if this were a movie, this is where your mom shows up crying and apologizing in the rain." I shook my head. "She won't. They think what they did wasn't that bad. It never is, when they're the ones doing it." A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. "Ryan, we didn't mean to hurt you. We just didn't know how to handle things. This house was our home. Losing it feels like we lost you again. Mom." I didn't write back. Because what they lost wasn't just the house. It was access. To me. They lost the casual right to call me family, after turning me into an accessory for years. They lost the benefit of the doubt. They lost a seat at the table they were never willing to share in the first place. I framed the letter. Not out of spite, but as proof. That I was never overreacting. That the silence I gave them was earned. That they noticed me, only when they were asked to leave. A month later, a new tenant moved in. A young couple, fresh out of college. I gave them a small rent discount after the inspection showed a leaky faucet I didn't care to fix myself. They didn't ask about the previous owners. And I didn't bring it up. Why would I? That part of the story was over. What mattered now was this: I owned something I used to be invisible inside. And the next time someone throws a party with cake, it'll be mine. And it'll say, "Congrats, Ryan," with extra frosting. Just because I can.